Love is our true divine nature, and our heart serves as the intersection of the spiritual and physical, connecting our soul with our body as the conduit for anchoring our divinity onto the earth plane. Embodying our divinity is the key to our ascension and to manifesting our highest destiny in this life. The teachings of the heart are alchemy. Join spiritual mentor and channel Jennifer Spohr each week on a sacred journey to lift the veil to remembering your divinity and meet other beautiful souls who are living the path of the awakened heart. Hey everyone, I am really overjoyed to welcome Deanna Riddick to the show today. She is the author. I'm already off to a great start today. She is the author of Awakening the Psychic Self and the Higher Self Oracle. She is a psychic teacher, Angelic Channel, and host of the Intuitive Awakening podcast. Her mission is to teach people how to recognize and develop their psychic abilities so they can heal and empower themselves. Additionally, her work focuses on teaching people how to remember their true divine identity. And as a channel, she aligns with the archangels to share messages of hope and clarity and brings truth to your awareness. Welcome, Deanna. So good to have you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, and I didn't realize before we hit record, I was just mentioning how you were a channel and I'm also a channel, and then I also realize you're a podcast host too. That's so cool. How long have you had your podcast?
I believe a little over 5 years now, I would like to say.
Wow.
It's been a while. Yeah.
So cool. I love having a podcast. I love having it because I love obviously, sharing our work in the world and everything, but I just love meeting new people too. It's so much fun.
Definitely. I enjoy having conversations with people who, bring something different to the table or share a completely different perspective, and a new insight that not only, helps me, but helps the listeners as well.
Absolutely. I would love for you to share with us more about what inspired you to this work, right? Because most of us are multi-passionate and multi-purpose too. And so, yeah, why did you choose this path? I would love to know.
I love the word multi-purpose. So I actually think this path kind of chose me. I think I'm going to put it that way because definitely unexpected. As a child, I could hear spirits all the time. I would always hear something calling my name, and I thought it was my sisters pranking me all the time, scaring me. So I would look under my bed or I would look in the closet, but nobody was ever there. And I heard it for a good portion of my life. So I didn't know what was going on. And at the same time, my family was pretty devout Christian. And, the notion of hearing entities or spirits was definitely, not positive. So I couldn't really share what was happening because I don't think I understood it myself. I didn't know what was calling me. I didn't know if I was crazy. It took a very, very long time for me to do some, I guess we can call it inner work or research before I understood what was taking place or what the plan was without my knowledge. So I feel like, this was always meant to be, but I really didn't have an understanding of it for, I would like to say, a considerably long, long time, because I was raised very devout. And it was very difficult to reconcile the teachings that I had growing up versus the experiences that I was having as well. But when I finally took a leap of faith and started seeking outside of how I was raised, that's when things started to open up pretty quickly. And I started to get some good understanding about, my beliefs that I always had in life, and then what the true nature of reality is, at least from my, I guess I could say from my perspective. So it wasn't a path that I would have chose as a kid, but it was something that I'm going to use the word calling in this case, that I was called to do or asked to do. So Very, very long story, but I'm shortening it quite deeply here
Well,
for
you
us.
did a great job of shortening it, by the way. And I know, for myself included, and I know so many other people listening to this can identify with what you're sharing, right? I mean, there's a lot I'd love to unpack from that. Like the first thing that came to mind is just that our the religious influencing can be so significant. I feel like the the religious influencing combined with the fact that so many of us are brought into this world, right? Living in a society that promotes conformity. And so when you're having these experiences that aren't like the experiences that you're learning that God is supposed to want you to have, right? And then no one else is having them, you're not exactly quick to
That's
shout it from the rooftops.
100%. And as you said, when you're born into a very like specific belief system, you're even taught not to question that belief system,
Yes.
because if you do, you all of a sudden have all this guilt that's internalized over time. And I think I experienced that for a long time as well. So even seeking elsewhere, reading something else outside of like, the standard or the King James version, I'll say, of the Bible is, a very difficult first step for a lot of people because they do feel that fear, that guilt, because after going to, church and listening to sermons for decades,
Mhm.
you're indoctrinated into that belief. And
Yes.
it's frightening to think that there is another way where there is no punishment aligned with that. So
Mhm.
those are major obstacles to overcome to do something that is considered ungodly.
Yes, and to be told not to question, by the way, in any context, not just
Yeah,
religious, is actually an inversion of our true nature, because our
yes,
souls are built for creation and expansion, right? And that
100.
involves questioning and learning.
Exactly. I totally agree. And that was something that I struggled with. My step grandmother was a minister, and I always had a lot of questions. And she was very, very quick to cut me off and say, her phrase was never put a question mark where God has put a period. And I've never forgotten that because I was told it so many times. So you're taught to just, like you said, conform and obey, but not question if, there's something else going on here.
Mhm.
It's very, it's difficult to move beyond that for a lot of people. And I experienced that too.
Well, yeah, the programming that what we're taught. I mean, there's a lot of can be a pretty heavy veil of illusion, around us with that, right? And I mean, in my experience, with on my own personal ascension journey and working with other clients too, is what we're talking about here, by the way, isn't even like just for beginners, so to speak. I'm saying beginners in quotes for those who aren't watching the video, but it's like uh I find that, on our journey, it's like an evolution, right? And there's always just kind of this higher frequency or this next level of what's coming in for you to be, to live expressed in, basically. I probably could have worded that better, but it's just like there's always the next level, essentially. And I
Yeah,
find that there's always some element of that stretchiness that we can feel as we step into, a new kind of horizon.
definitely. And I think, yes, I like the way that you put it, that we're stretching. And I feel like we're always being, I don't like to use the word force because I don't believe in force, but, asked to stretch our consciousness a little bit more, especially
Yeah,
the more you step into this type of work, you'll have different experiences that cause you to have a little bit more faith or more inquisitiveness than you had before, because there really are no limits to anything
so
except for what we
true.
put in there. Yeah.
So true. I'd love for you to share more about that moment that you actually took the leap, right?
Yeah.
Because there's the whole journey of realizing you have these gifts and that you're having these experiences. And then there's like the day that comes that, okay, I'm doing this.
Definitely. So, I'm going to say a couple of different things here because there were some profound moments when I finally, was like, okay, I am going to, yes, take this leap. I'm going to open my heart to something different and I'm going to release some of the guilt that I've been carrying for decades, plural. Um, I remember it was really one night, just to sum up one of many, one night where I was, praying to God, but, the way I was taught. And I was very clear because I'm a very practical person. So I'm not into like standard prayers, but I was like, look, God, I am hearing voices. I am hearing things. Am I crazy? If this is something more, I really need you to show me. Like I'm at that point in my life where I really need the clarity. And I had a very wild dream. And in the dream, there was a spirit there, but I couldn't see them, but I could hear them talking to me. And they asked me to draw a couple of symbols. And I was like, what are these symbols? Why am I drawing them? I don't need to draw them. I'll remember them. And he was like, no, 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 draw them. If you draw them, you'll remember the symbols and they're going to be really important for you. And I said, okay. So I drew the symbols out and then I woke up the next morning and forgot all about it, right? Of course, that's what happens. And then I went for a run and I came back home and something triggered the memory while I was in the shower. And I thought, oh my God, these symbols, what are these symbols? So I started looking them up, but I couldn't really understand the symbols. And I thought, okay, forget it. So at that time I was getting my PhD. So I was researching. I decided to go back to my research and I was just couldn't stop thinking about these symbols. And I took a break and I'll never forget. I opened this book that I purchased like a few years prior to. And when I started reading the book, on one page was one symbol, on the next page was the other.
Oh,
And
love
I'll never
the
forget that.
synchronicity.
It was very, very magical. And I thought, oh my God, is this real? And it was all about the nature of consciousness and reality. And I thought, what the heck is going on here? And then I started to have recurring episodes of this. And finally, I'm really synthesizing all this information, but finally I sat down and I was like, if somebody is here, can I hear you? Let me hear you, because I think I can hear, but I don't know if I'm crazy. And then boom, I heard my spirit guide talk. And at that time, I was very still unsure of what a spirit guide was. I just knew there was somebody there with me, and he was so thrilled. I have a new guide now, but originally he sounded like the genie in Aladdin. I'll never forget that voice. And he was so excited and I was so excited. And I was like, who are you? And he was like, finally, finally. And he explained, you've been afraid your whole life. And he understood, but he was like, you're here to do something else. And I'm here to help you. And things were very different after that. So there's a lot more to the story, but it was really just needing a lot of clarity because intuitively, we know, there's something a little bit different. And it's when you either start to see things for people who have clairvoyance or you hear things, you really know something needs to take place or there's something else going on. It's just having, the courage to follow through and, explore. And
Yeah.
ever since I connected, that's pretty much what I've been doing.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. To all of that. I'm just trying to decide here, where do I want to take this? Because there's a couple of really key points that I want to bring forward. One is what you said about knowing. So I'm going to say what I want to talk about because otherwise I'll forget because I just have all this stuff coming in. I'm just like, oh, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about knowing. And I also want to talk about developing your gifts. Okay. So I want to talk about knowing first in reference to what you were sharing. Because you were saying, right, that we really do know.
Yes.
And because of our conditioning, I'm saying this part, but the conditioning, we keep questioning it until something so profound happens, until we experience something so profound that we can absolutely, without question, we know that we can't deny, right, what's happening. Something that I teach a lot of people, which I'd love to welcome your thoughts on too, is that it's so important to know what truth feels like to you in your body, right? Because all of what you're talking about with the thinking and oh, it's not this, or maybe I'm making it up, that's all coming from the ego mind, right?
Yeah.
But if you know what truth for you feels like in your body, and everybody, whether they feel like their gifts are developed or not, really do have that knowing. Everyone's had some type of experience, right, where they just knew something.
Yes, for sure. You'll hear people say, I knew this was going to happen. I just don't know how I knew, but I knew.
Yes,
You know?
it's
They say
that.
it all the time. I'm like, do you recognize what you're saying? It's like you had an awareness and a knowing, but you couldn't explain how you got to that knowing. But we all internally, we're all gifted with that.
Yes,
We're all
we
gifted
all
with
are.
this sort of
Yes.
awareness.
And it might
Mhm.
be different for some of us, right? It's like I often share a quote by Joan of Arc, because I just love the energy of Joan of Arc. And I'm assuming you're familiar with Joan of Arc.
Yes.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a quote from her. My favorite quote from her is, "I'm not afraid. I was born to do this."
Mm.
The energy of that quote is that knowing.
Yes, I love that. Very, very empowered, very self-assured.
Yes. And so, just speaking to everyone who's listening to this, right? It's like when you know something, when you have that feeling of knowing, whatever that is for you, because it's different for everyone, by the way, and it usually resides in your body. Okay.
Mhm.
um Even if you are experiencing something that doesn't exist in society or in the world today, yet you have that knowing, there's something to that.
Definitely. And it's a magical feeling. You
Yes.
I love that. It's just, to me, it's an insightful gift from above. But every single person has that. Nobody is exempt from that in a way. We all have the ability to have a a state of awareness that is, it's truth telling. It's super helpful, not just to yourself, but always in service to other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And now for the other point I wanted to put emphasis around, which was, when you were talking about, again, kind of going back to similar reference of feeling like maybe you're making something up, or um,
Yes.
being tuned in to how your intuition, to how your soul's guidance speaks to you is really key too, right? Because in of itself, posing the question of am I making this up is a fear-based thing. And that doesn't come from your soul, that comes from your ego mind, right? So
Yes, it
knowing how
definitely
that voice speaks to you, like the difference between the two, I feel like is super important.
100%. And I think that question, it also comes from not wanting a fear of being wrong. I think a lot of us have this fear of getting information wrong, or, if we've been wrong a lot in the past, I think it kind of, comes from there as well. But I do think it is important. Like, trust is very important, and learning to like trust your own insight, your own inner voice is incredibly crucial. It's there for a reason. It's there, it's your companion, on this journey, and it wants you to succeed. And it's trying to offer you I would like to say, it's maybe this, I shouldn't say this, but like a clarity. And again, the best word for me is awareness, or a different perception of reality to help you on the earth plane, living in a physical embodiment, but learning to trust that voice, or in even cultivating that voice, I think is crucial for every single person here. And if we did, life would be a very different experience for everybody.
Absolutely. And I believe, trust is multifaceted, right? And it's kind of like when we're developing those gifts, we go through stages. It's like, first of all, coming to the conclusion that, okay, I'm not making this up, like this is real. And then now, and then trusting that. And then
Yeah.
taking another step forward to trust, okay, well, now I need to act on that. So that's a whole other, type of dress too.
Definitely. And I do think though, a lot of us, like you spoke earlier, when we're here in the world, we listen primarily to the ego. We listen to the voice of the ego, we listen to its thoughts, and we usually act on that. I hate to use the word guidance because I don't think it's like true guidance, but we act on its beliefs 9 times out of 10. But we're not taught to listen to the inner voice, and learn how to actually cultivate it through time. And if we did that, it would definitely shift us. But what's so important about cultivating it is that if you make at least 5 to 10 minutes a day to sit down and yes, meditate, everybody's favorite thing to do. But if you did that and tried to hear the voice, of your inner self and soul, higher self, whatever name you want to give it, if you do this all, like I would say once a day or a few times a week over time, that small still voice within is actually going to get louder. I think people are not aware that the cultivation of it is super important. And so once you've cultivated, one day you'll be sitting somewhere having a conversation with someone, and then while they're speaking, you'll just start to hear and get a little bit of insight. And this happens to everyone, but you have to make time for your own self to do it.
Yes, meditation's a fantastic vehicle for that, right? And
Yeah.
and how amazing is it that meditation is everyone's favorite thing? I mean, really, because 20 years ago we probably wouldn't be having the same conversation even. And and I just feel like we're super blessed to be living in a time where the pendulum's swinging back, you know,
100%. And you're right,
tens
several
of
years
thousands
ago,
of years or however long it's been. So
definitely considered, I would say, yeah, years ago it was considered fringe, but now it's very mainstream and you can converse with anybody, even within a business context, about meditation because it's becoming a part of like wellness programs for a lot of businesses because mindfulness or however they want to, what language they're using now, which is fine, they're mainstreaming it, but it's becoming normalized for everybody and more palatable. And I think that that's incredibly important.
well, imagine living in a world where all of, like, how many is it now, 8 billion or so people are living a soul-led life, are tapped into their gifts, are living in alignment with their values.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how amazing is that?
It would be a very different experience on the earth. I think, and maybe I don't know, I just have this feeling, it's going to take a while. There's a lot of shifts that need to occur first. But I do think, each person who gives themselves that time and listens to their intuition, or we can say it's even their heart, it changes you. And then when you change, the people around you, are affected by that change. And I think, as energy shifts, it helps to change the planet. So I think we're getting there.
Sure, I feel like we definitely are. And
Yeah,
I love that we're here having this conversation, and the more people that hear it, the better, right?
definitely. Exactly.
Yeah, there's lots of people in the world that are in the space that you described being in, questioning your gifts or just maybe newly bringing some of those things forward. And like I was saying earlier, it's not just a beginner's thing. Our journey is an evolution, right? And I'm sure you've probably experienced this too, that you have more gifts come forward or you lean into your gifts, more deeply. We're eternal students.
Exactly. I think that's a really good point because I don't know about you, but whenever I've done my research on psychic development, I've never really read any texts where they talk about, your gifts kind of changing over time. It's always pretty like I have, pretty much this is what I have, the end. Well, no, my personal experience has been I've been doing this for 10 years. And, the past few years, some things have really changed. And I'm learning to go with the flow. I like how you said lean in, go with the flow and trust that this is the journey and there's a reason that this change is happening.
Yeah, and maybe that's why we're here, right? To talk about it being an evolution.
Yes, 100%.
Yes. In closing, what else are you feeling guided to bring forward?
Oh God. It's been very funny. Lately, I've been talking to a lot of people who have felt very discouraged about life, or very discouraged about what it is that they have to offer on the planet. So yes, I know there's a lot of egoic thinking associated with that, but I always feel like whenever I'm speaking to anybody, I'm always articulating a message of really believing in yourself. You are just as important as everybody else on this planet. What you have to offer is just as immense as anybody else. No matter where you come from, what your gender is, what you look like, what you've lost, what mistakes that you've made, are always of value. And I feel like that is, such beautiful insight from above, because it's truth. And
Well,
when you
yeah,
hear,
comparison is another example of that illusion of separation.
yes,
There is nothing that fosters fear or separation that is of God, period.
period. Exactly. And that illusion is it's a difficult, it's difficult for many people, because many people do compare themselves against somebody else, and they feel their self-worth
Yeah.
is lessened. And then when you have issues with your self-esteem or your self-worth, it definitely impacts your ability to go for your dreams and believe in yourself and even love yourself, and that causes all other types of issues.
Yeah.
So
I love that you're bringing that up, because I know a lot of the clients that I work with and a lot of the people that listen to this podcast as well are paving a path, or they're being called to, right?
yeah,
And so no one else is doing what you're doing. So when you feel called to something, it's important to know what that truth, that knowing feels like for you, and to know that you're living in a time where things are shifting, right? And if you think about, some of the, up to this point, some of the more well-known inventions of our time, right? Those were people that took a chance on themselves and believed in themselves to an extent, despite what the rest of the world was probably telling them, right? I mean, like the internet, to me, it's magic. To me, science is magic.
yeah.
Everything is alchemy and everything is energy. And I just find it so fascinating. I could have a whole other conversation about that, but
Exactly. And you're right on point there. Like, everybody is unique. Everybody came here to be of service and offer something that is specific to them. So what is for you cannot be taken away. So just always keep that at the forefront of your mind, and spirit always works through you, and you always have the guidance that you need on the inside to reassure you, comfort you, and guide you to take the next step.
yes. Deanna, what a joy to have you. I mean, I can talk about this stuff 24/7. So I
Yes,
loved
thank
having you
you.
and loved our conversation. And it's literally felt like a couple minutes. So clearly we're in this vortex.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation as well.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Path of the Awakened Heart. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or pathoftheawakenedheart.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about living with an awakened heart and navigating your ascension journey, visit me at jenniferspore.com.